Hello and welcome back to Remake Hot Take podcast, the podcast where we play studio executives pitching remake ideas of our favorite and new media. I'm Marriya Schwarz.
And I'm Brooke Rees, and this week we are doing the original Twister film, the 1996, starring Bill Paxton
Mm-hmm.
and uh, um,
Helen Hunt,
Helen Hunt. Yes.
who I always mix up with Holly Hunter.
But yes, we are doing this movie. I had never seen it before. It was a first time watch for me, which is surprising since I am the queen of disaster films, natural disaster as well. But we wanted to, go back to our roots since Twisters, kind of a sequel, kind of just a reboot, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Starring Glen Powell was just released um in the past like week or so.
Have you
And
seen it?
have not seen it. I probably will see it, but the internet is thirsting after Glen Powell.
What do you
Um,
think of him?
I don't know. I feel like this is an unpopular opinion. Like, I see it. He's like a class of like classically attractive man, but something about like his eyes, I think they're like too close together or something. Like if you were to
Mm.
pop them into one of those TikTok filters where you could adjust like the eye spacing, I think just like 2 millimeters out and we'd be perfect. But who am I to judge? He's like a 10 out of 10. I am nowhere near that, but just personal preference for who I would be lusting after. I like his like personality on all of the red carpet interviews and press tour stuff that I've seen. He seems like a fun guy, and I love a man that's obsessed with his dog, and Brisket is like a great name. My bunnies also have food names, Bagel and Parsley. So, if we were to fall in love and get married, sure, bagel, parsley, brisket. I wouldn't deny that. But yeah, I actually don't know that I've seen him in any movie. I literally don't know if I've ever
What
seen
about
a Glen
Hidden
Powell
Figures?
movie. Was he in that? Was he an astronaut in that?
Yeah, like the main astronaut.
Okay, I've seen him in that then, but I don't think he like the astronauts are like minimal characters compared to the women in
Um,
that movie, but I
he was
haven't
in
seen
Set
any
It
of
Up.
his
He was
mm-mm,
in Hitman. He was
mm-mm.
in Spy Kids 3.
Spy Kids 3?
Yeah,
Oh, what was he in Spy Kids 3?
he was like one of like the challengers or something.
Mm,
Here, wait.
well,
Like
we all know my feelings
um,
about Spy Kids 3.
you know,
Let me put it this way, I have not seen any of his like I feel like he's really popped off in the last like 3 years, and he's had a bit of a leading man moment, and I haven't seen any of those recent films yet with him as the main character.
yeah, so in Spy Kids 3, like when Junie is going up into like the like battle thing where he gets the battle suit and he fights against his like love interest or whatever, Glen Powell is like the one who's like explaining the rules.
Ah, okay. So I've seen him in minor roles
Mm-hmm.
from many years ago, but yeah, I have not seen him in any of his recent leading man roles. But
Yeah, I didn't
um
see the Sydney Sweeney movie.
mm-mm,
I did see Hitman.
how was that?
It was fine. Again, it's like it's the chewing. And I think like I've seen videos of him chewing normally, like when he's just chewing to consume food versus chewing as an actor. And I think his natural chew is more natural, but in when he's acting chewing, he like slows it down so much and makes it like the focus of the scene, which I don't
Hmm.
think chewing is typically the focus of like a lunchtime conversation.
Yeah, they're usually not zeroing in on the
Mhm.
on the fake chewing, but yeah, but I'm excited. I probably will see it. Maybe I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
100% sold. I know that
I just
most
hear
of
things about
this
Kiernan Shipka.
I think she dies.
Yeah,
I'm
like
pretty sure.
almost
Yeah,
immediately.
like
Everyone
immediately.
was like, "Oh my God, that's so cute that she's in it. She's such a happy character. Why didn't she do the press tour?"
Yeah, I think she's eliminated pretty quick, but it seems like this is more so a movie that is like an experience, you know what I mean? I
Well, they
everything that
do
I'm
have the
seeing.
4D or the
Mhm.
4 whatever experience where you get to like be rattled around or whatever. Would you ever do that?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It seems like everyone that has seen it has opted for the
Mm.
4D viewing experience. So, I've had minimal 4D experiences in my life. I don't know that any of my movie theaters like offer that. I think one of my first 4D experiences was like A Bug's Life at Disneyland
Mm.
or Disney
Mhm.
World. I think of like Animal Kingdom or something. I think there's a Bug's Life ride. And I think there's another one too. I think like early on there was some sort of like Fantasia um ride as well. And I remember Bug's Life, it's like you feel it like bumpies on like your butt. And then I think the Fantasia one, it was like they pumped in like
Oh yeah, I
smells
know
of,
which one you're talking about now.
yeah,
Yeah.
like pumped in smells of like, I don't know what it was, like a cake or cinnamon or something. So those were my first 4D
So they're
experiences.
going to
Like,
pump in the smell of Glen Powell.
they're like, this is his scent. Probably like I think women are going crazy for him, so maybe they'll like spritz some like pheromone spray in the air. But yeah, really it's been limited to those experiences. And then more recently, there was a like small theater when my parents and I were walking through a zoo that had during Christmas time like all of these Christmas lights and displays and stuff. And like along one of the stops you could stop into like their small theater and they were playing like a 15-minute abridged like Rudolph companion story thing. And we did not realize that it was going to be um a 4D viewing experience. And my dad had like recently had like a pretty bad like back injury and was like recovering. And it was like
There
me,
weren't like signs or anything?
no. And it was like me, 25-year-old, and like my 70-year-old parents, and then like everyone else was like 30-year-old adults with their like 5 and under kids. And so it was mostly like kids in the audience. And we got in there, they started the like weird like abridged Rudolph. And it's like you always get like water sprayed on you. Like water being sprayed is as like a like integral part of the 4D experience. For the Rudolph one, there was also like a moment where like presents like toppled down and you got like jabbed in the back. So my dad with his like back injury got this like blow to the back. And then he also did not realize it was like the first movement that we received. He did not realize at this point yet that it was a 4D viewing experience. So he thought it was the little kids behind him. And there was almost like a fight on our hands
Oh
with my
no.
70-year-old dad and like a 4-year-old. But we smoothed it over. So those are all of the 4D viewing experiences that I've had. So I'd be, welcome to add another one to the bucket list, but it seems pretty intense. I've seen clips of people filming in the theater and the seats in front of them like are like full roller coaster like I don't know. People are getting like whiplash and stuff. I don't think that's a movie where you can like have like a drink or like eat popcorn or anything.
Hmm.
Like you're like belts buckled in, like seatbelts fastened, enjoy the ride. So I don't know. Would you see it? Would you do 4D or would you skip
Um,
Twisters entirely?
I don't know. I mean, I don't like spending money on new movies, so I would probably wait for it to come out on some kind of streaming service kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you think
but
you would give yourself the 4D experience like it comes out on Netflix and then you just like set up like a big fan and like kind of like rock around in your seat a little bit?
I think I'm good laying
No,
down.
okay.
Um, but yeah, no, I mean, I did at Disney World one time we did like I don't even know what it was called. It was like a storm watch thing where it was like a 4D experience of a hurricane.
Oh.
And you got to like, you took a quiz on like what preparation thing should you do like, should you tape up the windows? Should you do blank? And then every time you got like a wrong answer, you would simulate how you died or whatever from that wrong answer. So I've kind of done it before.
Wow, I love that. What if they did that for like other things, like your driving test? They're
Mm.
like you go into the driving test simulation and they're like, what do you do at a four-way stop? You answer incorrectly and they're like, no, you're about to experience like a T-bone. It would be an effective learning tool, honestly. You'd be very like incentivized to not get those answers wrong. But yeah, let's hop into Twister the original, not the plural form. And what's your history with this movie, Marriya?
Both my parents showed me this one. So I think it's one of their kind of favorites. I mean, it's by like the same guy who wrote the novel version of Jurassic Park
Oh,
and who did like the original Westworld and stuff. And I think he also created ER, which is like kind of like the a little bit
okay.
of the random one. But yeah, so I've definitely seen it like a few times. And I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's good. I mean, I feel like it's kind of it blends together a little bit with Contact for me because I feel like Contact is also like a scientist, a female scientist who is like held on too hard kind of movie, and I kind of
Mhm.
associate Jodie Foster and Helen Hunt and I guess Holly Hunter as well all together. Um, but yeah, what about you?
Interesting. Yeah, I had never seen it. This was a first time watch for me. It was again one of those movies that I feel like was fairly consistently playing on like cable TV.
Mm.
And definitely my mom really liked this movie. Like she talked about it before. And it was like a situation where I would walk in on her like watching it and she'd be like, "Oh my God, this is like a great movie." And I don't know, I feel like disaster movies are just like so much more common these days. I think it was like really like a hallmark like of the disaster genre for our parents' age. Because they all seem to like know it and really like it and like revere it a little bit. But that being said, I guess I can jump into like my overall opinions because as a like self-described disaster movie aficionado, like a movie from this same time period that I love that's a disaster, a natural disaster base is Dante's Peak. I've talked about it before. I love that movie. It's like a volcanic eruption, and I feel like that's like disaster and like the intensity and the thrill and the suspense like done right for that time period. But this movie, as a bit of an older movie now, I don't know. I just didn't see like the hype compared to some of the other disaster films I've seen. And I feel like it may be a case of like I like disasters when like people are like trying to survive. They're like, either innocents like in the pathway of destruction, trying to band together and survive, or there's some sort of like really big like suspense and buildup. And I think maybe why I didn't connect to this film as much is I didn't like connect to the characters and their motivations because I am someone who is like extremely risk adverse. Like I didn't walk until I was like 18 months old. Like I'm on like the low end of the spectrum in terms of like risk taking. And like for me, these characters, their motivations just sounds like all of these people are crazy. Like I am like the now ex-fiance Melissa in this movie. I'm like, these are stupid reasons to be doing what they're doing. And
Yeah.
even though like they give the vague motivation, obviously, that this was they're trying to further the science to create better warning systems to then eventually um no longer have the loss of life that we see with tornadoes because there aren't these advanced warning systems, compared to something like a hurricane where like days, weeks, months in advance, maybe not months, but days and weeks in advance. And so, they give it that like heartfelt motivation, but simultaneously they make a lot of these characters seem to have like this obsession and the glee and like the thrill of the chase that storm chasers have. And it was kind of hard to match like the thrill of like I love Philip Seymour Hoffman. He's a fantastic actor and he plays, you know, kind of a goofy sidekick character, but he's like, I can't wait for this. Like there's a lot of like glee associated with the potential for destruction that doesn't quite, in my opinion, match their like you know, kind of backstory of like scientific advancement and stuff like that. So I don't know, and it just seemed for me, I still, like, enjoyed it. I gave it, I think, like, 3 out of 5 stars. Just wasn't super notable for me, and then my other critiques are that, like, just some of it just felt, like, straight up dumb. Like, they're supposed to be these scientists that have had, like, years and years to, develop, like, a prototype, the Dorothy prototype for you know, tracking the inside of a tornado. And then like the things that happen as like the, you know, the obstacles that they must overcome is getting Dorothy to work. And they're like they're obstacles that are so like easily thought of.
Mm.
They're like, "Oh, no." They're like, "The tornado knocked it over." Like, they're like, "Oh, no, we can't get it to, like, stay in one place." And I'm like, "Do you know what a fucking tornado is? Like, how was this not in the original fucking blueprints for, like, things that we must avoid
Mm.
when making Dorothy?" Like,
Yeah, I
it
don't feel
seemed
like
like
they tested it on like a wind machine kind of thing.
I don't even think that you would need to test it. Like, obviously, these were the initial test runs that they were doing, but to me, these are like innate, like, no fucking shit would this be a potential, like, conflict that would come up. And so I was like, this is so not well thought out. But there were, like, moments that I really liked, and I thought, like, the, CGI, I guess, was good for the time, like, it looked, like, really good, looked pretty convincing at times.
Like the
Um,
cow.
the cow, and I can jump into that too real quick. I feel like this movie is, like, anti-animal, like, I was
Well, no, the
getting
horses live in the end
do
somehow.
you I didn't, like, see that. I was, like, concerned about the horses. I was very sad about all the farm animals. We have the cow as, like, a you know, it's like a funny moment. They're like, "Oh, cows." But, like, I don't know, I was, like, really sad about the cows. I know that is, like, a very dumb and trivial complaint, but it started out with, like, Will, like, forgetting Toby, the dog, at the
Mm.
beginning, and only little girl Joe was like, "Hey, we should get our family pet." That was, like, right there in the room, like, we had time to grab both, like, the five-year-old child and the dog. So we almost leave Toby out in the cold, and then we are, like, gleefully looking at poor cows being, like, ripped up and, like, sucked up to their death. Then horses, which I guess survive in the end, but, we are also pro dog, for Aunt Meg's, like, golden retriever, so I'll give give 'em that, but I was like, "This is sad." The cows are sad, we should not be just staring at them in awe. So I don't know. PETA would be upset by that depiction, but PETA is, I think, a bit of an extremist, not great organization in and of themselves. But yeah, those are kind of like my very trivial, not very serious, kind of surface level complaints of the film and why I maybe didn't connect to it as well as some other disaster movies. But like I said, overall, gave it a 3. I think that it wasn't like thrilling enough or suspenseful enough for me to really like want to go back and rewatch it. But my 3 rating is that was a movie. So that was a movie. Don't feel super negative either way. But yeah, what about you, Maria? Overall thoughts or critiques or favorite moments?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like there's so many characters,
Mhm.
so many like background characters that no one was super like well developed. Like we understand that Holly Hunt's character has this like traumatic backstory of like why like she's the only one who's been in an F5 and where she thinks that the tornado skipped all the other houses and came for her dad and stuff. So we have that backstory, but I didn't entirely understand his backstory or anyone else's, and they kind of write it off as like, oh, well, they're just like following you, which like doesn't make the most kind of interesting characters. And it's also like, no one really like dies, at least like
Mm-hmm.
in this one we lose Kiernan Shipka, so that's right off the bat. I don't know, maybe that's like the dad character, maybe that's like the origin story for in that movie, I'm not sure. But even that guy who's like cut by that gear or whatever that thing is, and he's like has a huge slice on his head, and that's like a big moment. We kind of like move away completely from that, and then the next time we see him, he just like has a bandage and he's fine. Um, and I think, it's kind of like a little bit wandery, which is like kind of, I guess, like the path of tornadoes anyway, but like, it's like, okay, we're gonna go to this tornado and try it. Okay, wait, something happened. Now we're gonna try this next part and then this next part. And so it felt like, I don't know, that we weren't really like accomplishing anything until like the very end.
I agree with you. Like the characters are like, I don't know, weird, and there is like a lot of wandering and not staying with them. You mentioned the dad. Let me get to that real quick. That was another thing that I was like, maybe I like fundamentally do not understand the physics of like a tornado. But I was so very confused as to why he even had to die. Like
Yeah,
my impression was that like everything that I've been taught about for tornado safety is that if you're somehow like out in the middle of nowhere, you want to like get on the ground, like get into a ditch if you can. If you're in the road, you want to get out of your car because it's your like bigger items are easier for the tornado vortex, the wind to like pick up and grab something like your car. So
if
they
you're in a
always said to
cow,
get
get out.
if you're in a cow, if you're on a horse. But they say like get out and go into the ditch. The ditch having, provided some sort of level of protection against both the wind and like obviously the biggest hazard is like being hit by debris is usually what you're going to be killed by. Or, like house collapsing and stuff like that. And so, I was like, oh, great. They made it to the storm cellar. They let little Toby in as an afterthought. And then I was like, why does he even have to hold this door down? Which
Yeah.
it's confusing that the door has like a window in it, since like windows are typically like the glass will break. Maybe it was made of some sort of like durable, like plastic material. But I was like, why? Like clearly, like Joe and the mom and the dog were fine. Once the door had been ripped off, daddy along with it, like you just got to get on the ground and like cover your head. So I was like, why is he even holding on to this door? Like it made no sense. It was such like a needless death, in my opinion. Again, maybe I'm fundamentally misunderstanding like storm cellar physics and tornado physics, but it felt so unmotivated. And then like you said as well, we don't have any like character deaths amongst like the core like friend group. They kind of witness two deaths, but it very conveniently is like they're two enemy rival scientists, and they don't seem to like necessarily grieve their death or be saddened by it in any way. They're just like, damn it, I told them not to go that way. It's just like a slap on the wrist kind of thing, but there's not really like the high stakes. I'm not really like invested nor concerned about any of the characters' fates, and yet they don't like put any of their lives at stake either.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why the dad died. I think because like no one else blew out of there. It also kind of pissed me off that even when they're at that little like drive-in theater, no one was really doing like the tornado drill like stance that like you learn in school.
Like,
I don't know. Maybe we had like different educations, or maybe they like, I don't know, maybe after they did like the warning systems, they started working on like tornado drill positions or something. That was the next like task for the team. Um,
yeah.
but it's like they're completely facing up so that all of their like main organs are all like up for grabs. And then like not really grasping their head. So like there would have been no way that that like cut would have happened if you had done like the full crouch where it's just like
Mm-hmm.
your back showing, where it's just like I think it's like, I think you only do like the back and you cover your head because those are like where the like the least important organs or whatever is, and that's where you can take the most damage. And
Hmm.
you tuck your feet under and all that kind of stuff. Um, but they're just kind of hanging out.
Maybe they developed the school tornado drill after this movie was released.
Yeah.
Like maybe they developed it in response to this movie.
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh my God." They were like, "They did not do anything correct in this movie. Let's not give, people outside of Oklahoma the wrong impression here on the threat." But yeah, that was kind of crazy. And then one other thing I wanted to talk about was like the character of Melissa, who's this new
Mhm.
fiance. And I was like, hey, like this is insane behavior. Like whatever the main character's name is. Um, what is the main character's name? Oh, Bill. Yeah, Bill. Bill Paxton plays Bill. Crazy Bill. And I was like, this is such like shitty, insane fucking behavior. And it's weird that they made her like a sex therapist. I think that's like a common like funny gag like job of the late 90s early 2000s movies. Like if there was gonna be a therapist, it's always like a woman and she's always like a sex therapist. I guess I'm also thinking of like Meet the Fockers kind of thing, but it's like a repeated trope that I've seen in a couple different movies from that time period. But it's like, girl, like stand up, like he is awful to you. And like you yourself are a relationship therapist. Like, what are you doing in this relationship? Like, obviously, it only takes her like 3 tornadoes to realize that he's kind of a fucking asshole towards her. But it was 3 tornadoes too many because the second that I like went on this little trip with him and his you know previous marriage, his former wife wasn't signing the divorce papers. Like, first of all, why am I even there? Like, this feels like something that could have been done like in private or like via our lawyers. And then the second that I expressed that I was like extremely like scared and nervous and did not want to go on this like tornado adventure, and then you like hop in the car with your ex-wife and leave me with your weird Philip Seymour Hoffman giving off rapey vibes kind of guy, I would been out of there. So they just treated her like absolute shit. I'm glad that she went.
Yeah, why
And
was
like
the only time to get divorce papers during the tornado season?
I don't know, because I think part of him like loved the thrill and like
Mm.
I think he was doing some subconscious like self-destructive behavior and he knew that he wasn't ready to, give up that lifestyle and was putting himself in situations where he was hoping to get another thrill. I mean, all subconsciously, like on the surface, he's like, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry," but like he treats Melissa like shit, and she is absolutely not the villain, and was totally in the right to be like, "I'm gonna peace out." She's like, "I'm gonna leave you crazy fucking people, and I'm gonna go lead a normal, risk adverse, safe life." Um, but yeah, that was kind of my summary of the movie. Did you have any other notable moments? I had some like general questions.
I don't know. I didn't like the part where um they find out, that the sensors need to fly, and
Hmm.
they're like being completely unsafe, and how they're like putting on the can aluminum parts and their fingers are all bloody. And I didn't know if that was like real or like the actors, or if I don't know, but people were being very unsafe there and it made me really uncomfortable. Um and then I didn't understand how they also drove through an explosion. That didn't make any
Hmm.
sense to me. I was like, they should have died. And also the fact that they found a serial killer barn was interesting, and the serial killers seem to be fine and dandy, and no one's really concerned about it.
Oh, that wasn't a serial killer barn. I think those were
Was it?
all like very normal farm tools.
Yeah, that's why it's the perfect cover.
Okay, true. I think we can't definitively say serial killer, but we
Hmm.
can say farm tools.
Hmm.
Yeah, none of it made sense. Which isn't like it's not a requirement for me. These disaster movies like often defy like logic, right? That's like the appeal of them, is to have these ridiculous situations. But when you give me characters that I don't like, motivations that I don't like, and then also scenarios that have like no basis in logic and are basically just like a Final Destination movie if they didn't die. Like, I'm not vibing with it. Like, you have to give me like one of those 3 things in a disaster film for me to like it. So yeah, none of those scenarios made sense. But I had a quick question. Have you ever been in a tornado or experienced any tornado activity?
I don't think so. I feel like I would
Mm,
know, and I don't think so. I mean, we've done like
okay.
tornado drills, and there's been storms and like maybe a tornado spotted or something, but nothing like this or that left any wreckage or anything like that. What about you?
I've been in 3 tornado situations, but
Okay,
they've
so
never
maybe
been
you need to change some behavior.
they're not my fault. So, one of them was in, and again, these were all like low, like F1 or F2, I think. And one of them was when I was like pretty young. My cousins got married like really young. I think they were like 18 and 19. Um, not married to each other, my cousin and then my cousin's, like, wife, but they were pretty young. I think he was, like, 19 and she was 18 or something, so I was very young at the time, and, like, everyone at this wedding was young because all of their friends were, like, still in high school and stuff, so, like, the average age was, like, 12, and I think I was, like, maybe 10 or so, and this was in, Minnesota, so kind of in that tornado-y belt of the country, kinda Midwest, a bit higher up north, but, we were like we left the wedding early because I was like a 10-year-old and I was with my mom and my like 90-year-old grandma. So we weren't really down for like the like middle school dance, prom-esque vibes that were happening like a couple hours into the wedding reception. So we dipped out of there a little bit earlier than everyone else. And it was like 2 grandmas. It was my cousin's other side of the family, his grandma, my mom, and myself, and we got into this, like, rental car van that we had, and the sky, like, literally turned green, and it got so scary so fast, and, we were, like, just, like, driving, like, open road, and then, like, all of a sudden, it was just, like, pouring rain, then hailing. There was, like, nowhere for us to go, like, there were no buildings or anything. My mom kept driving. We were, like, turning on the radio. The wind was, like, so strong. We eventually found, like, an abandoned, like, warehouse type thing and, like, got up and drove, like, underneath the awning of that, and, we, like, just, like, stayed there and waited it out for a while. So all of these instances, like, nothing, like, traumatic happened. It was just, like, very scary in the moment, and we eventually, like, just pulled over and kind of waited it out. But I was, like, screaming and crying, and my one grandma was, like, not very in touch with her emotions. She did not know how to comfort me. So, like, my cousin's other grandma, who I had never met before, she was, like, comforting me in the back. My mom was, like, freaking out. And then everyone else that had been at the wedding still, they told all of them that they had to get into the basement. So they, because the tornado, I think, was a little bit closer to their where they were. So they all had to get in the basement. So their entire wedding, like half of the reception was spent like in the tornado drill position until the area had cleared. So that was the first tornado incident that I had. Then another one, my mom and I were driving again in summertime through the Midwest to go visit my family up in Minnesota. And that time we didn't see the tornado. It was like clear where we were, but we could see like off in the distance like storm clouds and stuff, and there were storm and it was starting to get like darker and darker and darker, and the sky does get like a really weird like greenish purplish color and then turns like really dark. and black and stuff. And we saw like storm chaser vans, and thankfully they were going in the opposite direction of us. That's what made us feel better. We were like, okay, we're driving the correct way. We do not want to be driving the same way as the tornado storm chasers. And they had like these like industrial like vans with like all their gear on top. And it was really cool. So we saw that one. Then a third time with the tornado, it was like in my hometown area, Pennsylvania, which, you know, Pennsylvania gets far less tornadoes than the Midwest. And this was like unprecedented, never had a tornado drop down here ever. And we were in a Staples going like back to school shopping. And we had like been in the store, we like heard like thunder. It started to be like a really intense thunderstorm outside. We like ran outside to our car with like all of my back to school Staples stuff. This was again me and my mom, and every tornado experience has been my mom and I. We ran out to the car and like deposited our stuff. We got in the car and we are gonna drive back home. And then we noticed it was getting like really shitty really fast. And again, it started hailing, super intense winds, and we were like, what the fuck? So we like turned on the radio, and there was like the tornado warning, like we could hear sirens. And we tried to run back into Staples and they closed the doors. They said no
Mm.
admittance. They did not let us back in. And there were like a couple other people, so we just pulled up our car again, like underneath the awning area, like the overhang, kind of up on the sidewalk. But yeah, Staples would not let people in. There were a couple other people that were trying to get in there and get to safety, but like, fuck you, Staples.
Yeah.
I still continued to back to school shop there, but they would not let a poor child and her mother back into the store to seek tornado safety in between like the stacks
Because
of
they saw
pencils and
Twister. They
paper.
saw what happened to that dad.
Yeah, they said no opening doors.
Mm.
We know the the trauma and the tragedy that door opening brings, even if it's just one of those sliding
Mm.
automatic doors. But yeah, they blocked them. And so that happened. And then we were driving through after it had passed, like back home. And this was like a 20-minute drive from my house, maybe 30 minutes. And it turned into a 4-hour trek home because they had closed all of like the highways. There was debris everywhere, like everything was just like completely trashed. And it literally took us so long to get back home. We were having to take like all these back roads. So that happened. And then last year there was a tornado in Cleveland, which was like again unprecedented. And I was like sitting there with my roommate at the time. And like my biggest fear with these things is that like I live on like the fourth floor of my apartment, and my bunnies are like really hard to like corral when I need to. So I was like, oh my God, like I was really worried about needing to get them. And it was like really late at night too. I think it was like midnight, and then the tornado like warning went off on my phone. It's like really loud. It's like the like Amber Alert sound as well. And I had to like grab the bunnies, and my roommate was helping me get them into their carrier. And then I was like, do we run downstairs? And again, like the sky just got like a really weird color. And we have like all these trees like by our apartment. So they were like whipping back and forth, and you could hear the wind, like the wind was howling. And I was like, where do we go? Because we have like no like basement area to go to or anything. So we were debating like going into like the inner stairwell. But yeah, so that tornado I think was just a couple miles away from us, so not like super close, but still close enough that you can feel the effects of it and get the warning and everything. So thankfully, fingers crossed, I've never been in like direct tornado has hit right where I am, but I've been in a lot of very close calls, tornado in the area, but just on the fringes of it.
Wow.
I know. Um,
Are you
but
hoping to
yeah.
be in a big one?
No, absolutely not. Like I said, these are like my worst nightmares. Like they really freak me out. Like I really do not like tornadoes. Very, very much freaked out by them. Which again, probably why I did not connect with the tales of storm chasers who actively seek them out. But yeah, any last thoughts before we jump into our remakes or who's your daddy stats?
So, Helen Hunt's dad, Gordon Hunt, was a writer, director, and actor. He worked a lot in directing animation series like The Jetsons, Scooby-Doo, and The Smurfs. And her uncle was also a director and lighting designer. Bill Paxton is distantly related or was distantly related to Sarah Paxton of Aquamarine and Halloween Town. 3,
I
4
love
fame,
her.
whatever movie that one was. And then Carrie Elwes's, I don't know how you say that exactly, but his parents made international headlines. So his mom was Tessa Kennedy, who was this major socialite in England. And when she was like 18 or 19, the story kind of varies, which is younger than the age that someone can consent to marry in England without parental approval, at least at that time. She ran away with society portrait painter Dominic Elwes to elope, and he was 26 at the time. And her dad ended up getting a restraining order against Elwes, thwarting their plans to get married in Scotland because they were also bombarded by the press. But they were able to escape to Cuba, where a mobster provided accommodation for them and they were wed. But this is during like Castro's revolution period. So they also had to flee back to now US on a
Wow.
raft with two National Geographic explorers who were going to Miami. And then they flew to New York City where they got their official marriage license. And when they returned to England, Elwes was arrested, but eventually released. But Kennedy remained as a ward of the court. And together they had Carrie Elwes and two other kids. And she eventually remarried a film producer who made The Long Goodbye, The Missouri Breaks, and Angel Heart. They were only married for like, I
Wow.
don't know, I don't think too long.
Holy crap. That's crazy.
hmm
Wow. All right, let's jump into the remakes. I can go first. This was a thrilling tale, and like I said, I didn't really connect with it, and I thought the level of suspense could just be a little bit higher. So I thought instead, something that brings, maybe equally the same level of suspense is just a good old game of Twister. So I think we just documentary style set up, just single cam, and just do like a Twister tournament, like hands, right hand red, left hand yellow. And I think honestly, we could build more compelling characters and storylines with just that. So yeah, that's kind of an easy one. Just Twister the game. And then I I really like the scene where, an entire house comes tumbling down into the center of the road. And so I kind of like the idea that we really like capitalize on that effect of the tornado. And instead of the tornado like completely like damaging it, and aside from the fact that they drove through this person's house, I think that the tornado could maybe just like be trying to relocate the house. It's like it saw the house, it saw like a prime real estate opportunity, and it kind of just picks up the house and moves it to like a different area. Similarly, I think it could be a potential like HBO spin-off. It's like, low level F1 tornadoes, and instead of causing like destruction and damage and just tragedy in its wake, it just kind of like rearranges the furniture a little bit. Like it kind of like enters your house, does a little bit of feng shui, puts the couch different facing, moves the TV, and then it leaves. And then we kind of like rate it at the end. Like, how did the tornado do better than like HGTV star Joanna Gaines? So it's kind of like a competition reality show. But yeah, so it picks up the houses, it does a little bit of interior design and decorating, and then just sets them right back down on like a prime chunk of real estate. So that's a potential spinoff. And we've talked a lot about the importance of doors in this movie. We talked about my story with Staples, the door is not opening. We talked about how the dad is holding on to this door for dear life. So I think we, go a little bit more into the dad's backstory, and, we just really ramp up the intensity of that initial opening scene. And we show him, holding onto the door, holding onto the door, but then where does he go after that is the question that I have. And I think that another really important door in cinema is that he holds on to that door and he keeps holding on until the tornado, zips him all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. And it is, in fact, the door that Jack and Rose sit on
Wow.
in the Titanic. So that door has a story to tell. And
Mhm.
I think that the dad still does die. He just dies in the ocean,
Mhm.
in the freezing ocean in winter,
And then that door is
from the
picked up,
Titanic.
and it becomes the door to Little Boo in Monsters, Inc.
Yeah. Then it goes in the Monsters Inc. door. We see it, we open it up again. We scare little Joe as a as a child. So this door has a story to tell, and I feel like we could have like a multi-universe a story for it. So yeah, the door gets picked up and it gets plopped down as the door that Jack and Rose sit on in the Titanic. Well, just Rose, because she's
Mm.
a bitch
Uh-huh.
and she doesn't like to share. And then another potential crossover here, I mention a lot M. Night Shyamalan. My favorite film from him is Signs. Um, Oklahoma, there's a lot of running through cornfields. I feel like the setting is a very important component of this film. And there are a couple of scenes where they're, zipping through there. So I think potential crossover is we see the tornado, destroying the land, going through the cornfields. And once the tornado has dissipated, we see that it has made perfect crop circles.
Mm.
And while like Joe and Bill are running through there, we could have another M. Night Shyamalan subtle alien leg pop out, just do its little whoop, pop out, scare the kids. So potential horror crossover, I feel. Potential universe expanding. Was this tornado actually from aliens? Does the tornado have like evil intent other than just mass destruction? So crop circles, tornadoes, cornfields, I think it's all there and ripe for a crossover episode. And then lastly, we talked about the issues with Dorothy and how the scientists, it really feels like they're kind of just like they didn't game plan this very much. They did not brainstorm what this would actually look like. And the whole conflict of the film is from them trying to get their prototypes to work, trying to get the balls sucked up into this tornado. And they try a couple of different techniques. Um, but again, I'm not really understanding why like the Dorothy part of the machine is even necessary, since it seems like the little circling balls is what's actually going up into the tornado.
Mm.
And since the tornado like sucks up everything like super easily, I feel like we could have achieved the same thing by just grabbing a couple of like professional golfers and
Mm.
having them be like a safe distance away and just having them, whip it in there.
Right.
So my proposal is that we reimagine this movie with Tiger Woods and any other golfer that you can name. I don't know. Arnold Palmer. Is he a golfer?
Isn't
We
that like a
get all.
drink?
I think it is, but I think it was named after a famous golfer named
Mm.
Arnold Palmer. So we whip up a couple of, the pros, and I think the reimagining of this film is that, instead of storm chasing, we let the storm come to us. We're
Mm.
more calm about it, and we just have the golfers just, tee it up and put the little like science balls right where they belong. They'll just pop them right into the storm, and even if they don't get like a hole in one, even if they're not close, it's a tornado. It will suck up the balls. So I feel like that's a much better idea and no one has to get hurt. We can stay a respectable distance away.
Mm.
So yeah, those are all of mine. What about
I mean, I
you,
think that's
Marriya?
also fair. Is like I mean, like we achieve the balls getting sucked up, but like we get readings, but are they actually useful? Like we never, I feel like, have that kind of, I don't know. But yeah, I didn't have much. I just had Twister, everything's the same, but every time someone says the word Twister, someone else says, Twister, I hardly know her. And then Twister, but they end up in Oz. So either that's like the characters, they just
Mm-hmm.
get sucked up, and then like maybe they've seen the film, so it's just like a pretty quick return. Because they, like in Wizard of Oz, that bitch in a bubble, she makes her go on this entire journey in like shoes that she hasn't broken into and maybe don't have arch support. And then the entire time she could have just like clicked the heels together is insane. So hopefully they've seen the film and they can kind of bypass the bubble bitch. And then my other idea was that like the machine goes up and the little balls go up and then the balls are released into Oz. But since they are sharp aluminum, Munchkins left and right are being sliced. And that's
That's
the end of
awful.
Munchkinville. And it becomes a bloodbath. But yeah.
Oh no, you didn't even go after like the Wicked Witch of the West or whatever.
Well, it's like, I
You want to
don't
attack the innocents?
well, they're just there, Who's gonna, I mean, Glinda arrives a little late. The witch is dead. So it's like they're just like sitting ducks.
Yeah. Wow, that's true. That's the grim reality of
Hmm.
of crossover
And then like maybe the
opportunities.
machine comes too, and then they are like, Dorothy did this, and they think it's Dorothy declaring war.
That's like her calling card.
Yeah.
Or it could be the entire Wizard of Oz, except instead of Dorothy, it's just the machine.
Yeah.
And they're like walking hand in hand with the machine. The machine tries to put on some ruby red slippers, but they don't make parts for that. So yeah, I love it. There's lots of opportunities there. All right. Well, where can they find you on social media and where can they find the pod, Marriya?
They can find me at Marriya Schwarz on all social media and at Remake Hot Take for the pod on all social media. Brooke, can they find you?
They can't find me, but they can find me very scared of a tornado
Oh.
until the end of tornado season. So they can find me, duck and covering in the proper positions as I've been taught. But yeah, let us know your thoughts on Twister, and if we should see the new Twisters with Glen Powell. Bye.
Yay.